Welcome to session 1 of our series Exhale, where we will be exploring mindful, gentle movement and pairing it with a pranayama, a breathwork practice in every session. And in our first session, I'd love to explore breath awareness with you. And so what that looks like is we aren't necessarily changing how we're breathing. We're not forcing ourselves to change our breath or to breathe differently. We are simply resting in the awareness of our natural breath and exploring pairing movement with our breath. So I'll give you more details as we get going, but for today, props that you might find helpful are some yoga blocks, some blankets, and then as always, you can have more props than that. If you know that you want your bolster, you can go ahead and grab it, but whatever you need, you can have with you, and I'll meet you here in our Sukhasana, our easy seated pose. I'm just sitting on some blankets just to lift my hips a little bit. And you can have your legs crossed, or if you prefer not to have your legs crossed, you could always have them extended out in front of you. You could have them a little bit wider. It really doesn't matter. It's totally whatever feels welcome to you. And as you come into this shape, whatever seated shape you want to be in, I welcome you to begin noticing any sounds around you. Maybe you take the eyes closed. Maybe you leave them open. It's your choice. And then shifting your awareness to your sense of touch. Maybe you can feel the temperature of the air on your skin. Maybe you can feel your clothing resting on your body. And then maybe you bring your awareness to where your body is touching the floor or whatever it is that is supporting you. Maybe it's blankets or a bolster or something else. And just feeling the contact point. Noticing your seat and bringing some awareness to your tailbone and your lower back. You might feel into your spine, maybe even starting to take some organic and gentle movement. So that might look like allowing your spine to bend and open, or maybe sway. Starting to invite any form of movement that feels welcome, just to start off our practice. You might even allow your neck to move with your spine, or maybe by itself. You could even use your hands to feel the muscles in your neck or your shoulders. Just starting to make a deeper, more conscious connection and contact with your body. We'll be here for just 1 or 2 more breaths. You might even move through the shoulders for this last breath. And then with your next inhale, I invite you to draw the shoulders up toward your ears, breathing in. And then exhale, allow the shoulders to float down and away. With your next inhale, you might bring some awareness back into your tailbone, the base of your spine. Allowing your next breath in to float the spine up towards the ceiling, growing a little bit taller. And then exhale to soften a little bit, but maybe you continue to keep some of this length, but without so much of the effort. And then pausing here. If you're ready, you might start to observe your breath. Whatever your natural flow of breath is welcome. You don't have to change it. In fact, I encourage you not to change it, to just watch your natural inhales and exhales. If at any point you feel the urge to yawn or to take a deeper breath and sigh it out, that's totally okay. You can follow those natural urges and notice how your breath regulates itself. And so for here, the next 8 to 10 rounds of breath, we'll just simply watch. Just watch your breath. You might notice the temperature around or in your nostrils as you inhale. And then as you exhale, does the temperature change in or around your nostrils depending on your breath? Maybe you follow your breath down past your nose and into your body. Perhaps you feel that there's an area of your body that responds more to your breath. Maybe it's your chest that you can feel rising. Or maybe your chest doesn't move very much. Maybe it's your stomach that moves more. Or vice versa. Maybe they move in tandem. Or perhaps it's your ribs that really expand. So there's no right or wrong here. I offer all of these awareness cues just to get you noticing and feeling and thinking about, where is my breath moving? It's not to say that your breathing is wrong. We're simply observing how your natural breath is moving. You can stay here as long as you want, watching your breath move in and out. And at any point that you're ready to continue moving with me, you might begin to inhale and extend your arms out open wide. And as you extend them out, you might even allow your body to take like the path of least resistance, maybe even drawing your chest forward, almost like you're taking a big stretch. And then as you exhale, maybe you reach forward and hollow out your abdomen. So maybe your spine curls back. And then again, inhaling open. Exhaling, reaching. Finding your own rhythm and your own pace. Can you allow your breath to be your guide. May you allow this affirmation to be a gentle and kind reminder to you today during class. My breath is my guide. Last one, inhaling open whenever you get there. There's no rush. Exhaling, rounding the spine back and reaching the arms forward as much or as little as you want. And then an inhale to open and return back to neutral, back to center. Just pausing for 1 or 2 breaths. As we move through class today, I really encourage you to move with your breath. And so that means that your pace that you set could be really different than my pace. It could be faster than me, it could be slower than me, and that's okay. I want you to feel that you have the freedom to move with your own breath, and so to kind of create some timing and container around our movements, I'll just let you know how many breaths we're going to be somewhere, and depending on the length of your breath, it could kind of change how often or how much or little that you're there. So just a little heads up. And if you're ready to move on to the next shape, I'll meet you in a tabletop. I have a blanket here for my knees. You might also enjoy that, especially if your knees are sensitive. You can have a blanket to provide some support. So coming here into tabletop, I invite you to join me for either a cat-cow, similar to the movement we just did, just different orientation, or a spinal roll. So I'll show you both. Cat-cow, you could breathe in, allow your spine to just drape down towards the earth. Maybe you even open up your chest and your throat just by taking your gaze forward. And then as you exhale, you could start to round through the spine, maybe even tucking the tailbone and the chin in toward one another. And then repeating that movement as you see fit. So this is a cat-cow. Or if you're curious for the spinal roll, you could tuck your toes and then start by inhaling and draping your spine down towards the floor. But this time, send your hips back so that you're kind of not quite in a crouching position, but you're kind of spring-loaded, if you will. And then as you exhale, you could start to round your spine and shift forward. Leading with your tailbone, if you're taking the spinal roll, you could allow your tailbone to start to curl back, allowing your spine to drape down towards the floor as you send the hips back toward the heels, opening up through the chest, and then curling the spine, rounding back forward. So 2 choices here, cat-cow or spinal roll. And also, you can make either one of these movements your own just by making changes and modifications based on how your body feels. So wherever you're at, I invite you to be here for the next 4 to 5 breaths. You also don't have to move quickly. You can move slowly, or you can move just with the awareness that you can take all of the time that you want here. Another 2 or 3 breaths. My breath is my guide. My breath is my guide. That means whatever you want it to mean, but for me today in this moment, it means I don't have to force my breath to be something it's not. I can take my time and breathe in a way that feels supportive to my nervous system. And if you feel complete here in your cat-cows or spinal rolls, I invite you to meet me back in a tabletop, back in neutral. And if your toes aren't already tucked, option to tuck them for a downward facing dog. If down dog is not in your practice today, that's okay. You could opt for a child's pose. A child's pose is to allow your knees to find a bit more space. Maybe your toes touch back behind you, and we set the hips back toward the heels and allow the forehead to either come to the mat or stack your hands, rest your chin if you prefer to have your gaze open. So that's child's pose. Or you could tuck your toes, lift your hips. I like to keep my knees bent. And maybe you stretch through the arms. Option to release one heel towards the floor and then switch it out for the other. Wherever you're at, whether it be child's pose or down dog, I invite you to be here for the next 4 to 5 breaths. Maybe longer if that's what you need. If you're in down dog and your hamstrings, the big muscles in the back of your legs are feeling very tight, it might help to take your feet as wide as the mat. Create a little bit more room for yourself. Couple more breaths. Last one. All right, wherever you are, if you are in child's pose, maybe you start to shift up into a tabletop if you're ready to leave that shape. If not, that's okay, take your time. But I'm gonna come into a forward fold, but I'm gonna come to it at the back of my mat. So I'm gonna start walking my hands back toward my feet. You can adjust your feet width as needed. I like to have my feet hip distance apart, but it might feel more welcome to you to have them as wide as the mat, or maybe narrower. So there's no right or wrong. So you come into a forward fold here. Take your time getting there. There's no rush. Maybe you bend into your knees a little bit or a lot, depending on how your body feels today. Option for a halfway lift if you're ready for it. Maybe you place the hands on the shins and lengthen through the spine. Or maybe you place your hands on your quads for a little bit more space. And then exhale to let it go back into your forward fold when you're ready for it. And then we'll walk the hands forward, starting to come into either a down dog or a child's pose. Just for a moment. One breath here. And I'll meet you in a high or low plank. So, option to hover the knees above the mat, or if that's not helpful for your body today, you could bring the knees down to the mat to create a little bit of support for your body. And then we'll breathe in at the top and exhale. Lower down to the stomach. Option to take a cobra here. So with your hands planted on the mat, the tops of your feet released to the mat. So no more tucking. I mean, you can tuck if you want, but maybe try it. And with the breath in, you could press into your hands, roll your heart space up, maybe take your gaze forward. Only come up as much as you want to. This isn't, more is more here. It's more of like a less is more kind of situation. And then pressing into your hands, shifting back. Child's pose or down dog, your choice. I'm gonna opt for a child's pose this time. 3 breaths. Can you reconnect here? If you've lost connection with your breath, that's okay. Can you use these next 2 breaths to reconnect? Just notice, I'm breathing in. I'm breathing out. Inhale, my breath. Exhale is my guide. You can stay here as long as you want. Or if you're ready to continue moving, you might take your hands, take your gaze to look at your hands and shifting yourself forward if you're in tabletop. We'll begin to step our feet forward and make our way into a forward fold. So however you get there, depending on what shape you're in, there's no rush. Take your time. You can set up how you need to set up for your body. And with your next inhale, or when you're ready to, maybe you find a halfway lift. And an exhale to fold. With your next inhale, maybe you start to rise, bending the knees. Option to sweep the arms up. And then exhale, hands come down to heart center. Or down at your sides, whatever works best for you. We'll just take a second here at the top. We just got here, so let's orient ourselves. Option to place one hand over your heart, maybe one over your abdomen. Can you feel your breath moving? One more breath in and out. With your next inhale, option to reach your arms up overhead and take an exhale for a forward fold. Inhale for a halfway lift. And an exhale to fold. All right, we're gonna step the right foot back into a low lunge. So if your you also go ahead and, if your blocks aren't nearby, go ahead and grab a block and just have it within reaching distance, because when we get into a low lunge, we'll have an opportunity to use it. So when we come into our low lunge, make sure that your hands are touching the floor. If they're not touching the floor, bend your knees more or use a block, because we want to be able to stabilize ourselves. And then step the right foot back and lower the right knee down. Adjust your stance as needed here. So take a minute to set up. We don't have to rush through this. So some people like to have their knee on the outside of their arm, so both of their hands are inside. Or some people like to have it in the middle, where their foot is in between their hands. So you can try both and choose what works best for you. Also, this is the place where having a block or 2 blocks is really handy, because sometimes the floor can feel really far away, especially if our body is feeling kind of tight. So you could use a block or 2 blocks to rest your hands, bring the floor closer to you, and just pause here for a second as we breathe and feel into this low lunge. You might even find it welcome to kind of move into your body a little bit. You don't have to stay still. You can kind of sway back and forth. You can sway front to back or side to side, whatever feels right to you. So take a second and feel your way into this shape. And then you might decide to stay right here. Maybe this is a really good spot for you and your body today. Or if you're curious or open to it, you might start to send the hips back. Option 2, keep your toes flat or tuck the toes at any time. You can change your mind, but you can kind of decide what works best for you. Send the hips back and start to lift up. My left leg feels really far forward, and so I'm going to adjust my stance, and you can do the same as well. Maybe your foot needs to go forward, maybe it needs to go back. Take a second, readjust. And then we're going to place a block to the left side of our hip. So I'm going to set mine at the tallest height. I'm going to set it on the left side. We're just going to forget about it for a second while we just kind of feel into our bodies. Maybe you even inhale and reach your arms up, finding lots of length. And breathing here. If you find that your right knee feels a little sensitive, you might explore tucking your back toes and then coming into it again and noticing, does that help? Does that not help? You might also need to just fold your blanket over again and create a bit more of a cushion. Maybe that's what your body needs. So you choose. One more breath in here. And then with your exhale, option to stay here or take your left hand over to your block and then lean on over to the left, reaching your right arm over, feeling a big opening in the right side of your body. Option to stay here for 2 more breaths in and out. You can stay here longer if you want, or you can take a big breath in, reach it up, and come on down, back to center. With our hands planted on the floor, we'll start to send the left leg back. However you get it back, that's okay. I'll meet you here. Your choice of a down dog or child's pose. You can send the hips back toward the heels, or you can lift the hips up towards the sky. 3 breaths. Can you reconnect with your breath here? My breath is my guide. If you're in child's pose and you're ready to continue moving, you could lift the head and start shifting yourself forward. If you're in down dog, you could start to take your gaze to your hands, bend your knees, and I'll meet you in a forward fold. Taking your halfway lift whenever you're ready for it. And then an inhale to rise, taking your time. Maybe you keep your gaze open, especially if you're feeling a little lightheaded after moving and just need a second to kind of support yourself with your gaze. One more breath. All right, we're gonna take it on the other side. Now that you know where we're going, you know the options. If you're ready, breathing in, we'll reach the arms up. Breathing out, we'll start to lower down. Forward hold. Inhale for a halfway lift when you're ready for it. And exhale to fold. This time, you could step your left foot back and release your left knee to the floor. Maybe you provide some extra cushion with your blanket, folding it one more time. Option to use your blocks or forego the blocks. A good 4 more breaths here, just feeling into your low lunge. Whether it be in stillness or movement, you choose. Two more breaths. And you could decide to stay right here, keeping your hands connected to the blocks. Or if you want, you could take the block, move it over to your right side, and then sending the hips back and lifting the chest up, adjusting your stance as needed. Maybe you inhale and reach your arms up. Maybe you leave them down at your sides. You choose. Wherever you're at, could you just feel your breath continuing to breathe in and out? If you'd like to take the side stretch on this side, you could breathe in. Exhale, allow your right hand to come to the block and reach your left arm over. 1 or 2 more breaths. And when you're ready to leave, big breath in to bring you back to center. And an exhale to let it go. Hands can come to the mat. We can send our right foot back as we either take a child's pose or down dog. You choose what is best for you. There is no wrong choice. Two more breaths. And with your next inhale, you might start to shift your gaze forward. However you get there, I'll meet you in a forward fold. Hanging out here for a second, noticing how this one might feel really different than your first one. If you're ready for a halfway lift, you could find it on an inhale. And an exhale to fold. Let's take 3 breaths here in our forward fold, if that feels okay. If not, you could always just rise up. And with your next inhale, you might start to bend into your knees and rise all the way up to standing. Allowing your eyes to open if you feel a little wobbly. And just breathing here for a moment. Noticing your feet connected to the floor, even adjusting your stance if it feels necessary or wanted. Option to take a cleansing breath in and out here. With your next inhale, breathing in deeply through the nose. Big breath out of the mouth. Maybe you take 1 more at your own pace. If you're ready for our next shape, we'll begin to move into our cool down. Our first shape for this will be our pigeon pose. And so you could begin to take a forward fold. Inhale for your halfway lift. And exhale to fold. All right, you have a couple options here. You could step your feet back, either coming into a down dog or a tabletop. It really doesn't matter which one you choose. And if you're in down dog, you could extend your right leg up towards the ceiling. If you're in tabletop, you'll just extend your right leg all the way back. We'll breathe in here. And then as you exhale, you can start to draw the right knee in toward the chest and allow your right ankle to come toward your left wrist. I like to tuck my back toes here, lift up on my back knee, and just scooch my left leg back, and then lower the hips down towards the floor. That's how I like to come into it, but that probably won't work for everybody because everybody's different. So another option, if you're like, that's really not working for me, that's okay. Here's another choice. You could allow your, I have to move forward for this one, tabletop. If that first option coming into it does not work, that's okay. From tabletop, extend your left leg and then take your left foot and allow it to create like this half circle back behind you. And then send the hips back. I'll move forward actually so you can see me a little bit better. Send the hips back. And then notice how you feel here. So there's a couple different options depending on how you feel in your body. And when you do come into it, when you arrive, you might notice if your right hip is kind of sinking down towards the earth and it maybe feels kind of lopsided, it might even be kind of compressing the left side of your lower back. If that feels uncomfortable, it's helpful to take your blanket and just kind of drag it toward you and create a little bit of a wedge. So I'm going to fold my blanket up and then I'm going to just scooch it underneath my right hip. So that might be helpful. It might provide a sense of support. And then you could stay up on your hands here. You could stay lifted, or if you prefer, another option is to come down onto your mat. Maybe using either a block to hold your forehead or your forearms to hold your forehead. So you choose. And then once you feel settled, I invite you to be here for the next 15 or so breaths, and just know that you are not required to stay here or stay in any pose or shape that does not feel safe to your body. So if 15 breaths in pigeon pose is not happening today, that's all right. You can choose to leave at any time. You do not have to force yourself to stay here. And maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you are really enjoying pigeon pose today, and 15 breaths does not feel like enough. And that's okay too. You can stay here longer. At the end of the day, it's always your choice. For the next 8 to 10 breaths, can you bring your awareness back into your breath? Maybe even counting them if that's helpful. Knowing that even uncomfortable sensations come to an end. Each breath in itself comes to an end. And then there's another one that starts again, and so forth. It's all temporary. Last few breaths here. If you feel complete on this side, you could begin to press yourself up and away from the floor. If you have your blanket wedge here, you could move it out of the way as we come to bring our legs in front of us. You could bring your hands back behind you. Maybe take your feet as wide as the mat if you'd like to windshield wiper your knees. It helps to have the feet really wide. And then send the knees over to one side and then the other. Adding a little bit of blood circulation back in, if your leg was asleep like mine was. Okay. And then before we rush off to the next side for pigeon pose, I'd like to invite you into a wide straddle. So, a couple options here. You can use a blanket to sit on, and this provides a little bit of a lift for your hips so that your spine doesn't feel like it's like collapsing forward. So you can forego the blanket, or you can use it, or maybe try both and see what you do prefer. And then you can take your legs as wide as you want to. There's no goal or end point here. It's completely whatever feels welcome in this moment. So coming here into whatever straddle, wide-legged pose feels welcome, blanket or no blanket. Just noticing how your legs feel. And then if you want to, you can stay right here at center, or you could even begin to place your hands in front of you, maybe walking your hands forward. Now there's a couple options here. You could just stay in stillness with your hands kind of holding you up or bracing you. You could choose to kind of like collapse into it, maybe use your block to like hold up your forehead. That's another option. Or you could rock. And sometimes this is a really good option when the sensation feels really intense. And so here's how you can add your breath into it as you press away from the floor, you can breathe in. As you rock towards the floor, you could breathe out. And just inhaling and exhaling. So you choose. You could even rock side to side. Wherever you're at, whatever you decide, I welcome you to be here for the next 8 to 10 breaths. Knowing that you can always change your mind. Four or five more breaths. Starting to find completion with your last round of breath. And if you do feel complete, you might begin to press yourself back to neutral if you aren't already. If you want to stay here longer, you can. And to come out of this shape, you might want to scoop up underneath one knee and just using your arm, your hand to pull yourself back to center, and then scoop up underneath the other knee. Do it the other way. And often to take a minute, maybe you squeeze your legs in toward the chest, kind of rebounding before we rush off to expand again. Or maybe you feel better to give your legs a stretch. Maybe that's another option. And then I'll meet you back for our pigeon pose. And again, there's a couple different ways you can get into this. You could do down dog. Some people really like that. You could do tabletop, whatever works for you. So I'll show you, because there's two different ways you can get into it from tabletop, and I'll show you both ways. Option one is to extend your left leg, and then inhale, and exhale, draw the left knee in toward the chest, allowing your left ankle to come toward your right wrist. Tuck your back toes, lift the back knee, and scoot your leg out nice and long, and then settle in. If this is not in the cards today, that's all right. Here's the other option. The other option is to extend your right leg and then make your half circle by sending your right leg over to the left and then scooching back. Oops, the wall is in the way, so I'm gonna do this. And then sending your right leg back until you feel like, oh, okay, I'm here, I've arrived. And again, you can utilize your blanket. If you feel like you're collapsing onto your left hip and it feels pinchy or uncomfortable, you could use your blanket to slide it up underneath your left hip and provide some stabilization. So give yourself some time and space to settle in. There's no rush. And we'll be here for another 15 breaths, but as always, you can choose how long you want to be here. Less or more, it's always an option. How's your breath? Can you connect with your breath here? Just watching it. That's all we have to do. That's all the invitation is. It's just noticing it. Starting to find completion with your last inhale and exhale. And then, if you're ready to begin making your way out, you can start to press yourself up. And give yourself a moment to rebound just by maybe stretching the legs out, maybe giving them a shake on the floor, or returning to the windshield wipers. Whatever feels good here, whatever you want to do. And then we'll begin to move into our final practice of breath awareness before we move into Shavasana, our time of resting. And I would like to do it in a prone shape, which it just means lying on our stomach. But if that doesn't feel safe or welcome to your body today, you can be in any shape that you prefer. You can set up for Shavasana if you want. And that means you could lie on your back, you could lie on your stomach, on your side. You could take it in child's pose, whatever works here. You could even stay seated and just have like a really supported seat. That's also an option. So all of that to say is that your choice for rest is personal to you, and you can choose whatever you want. I like to do this breath awareness practice lying on my stomach because the floor provides some feedback. And another option, if you choose to lie on your back or to stay seated, is to simply place your hands over your stomach to provide a similar form of feedback if you want to. So whatever you choose, I'll meet you in that shape of choice. And we'll just arrive for a moment. You might need to adjust or change anything. And then here, as we start to slip into our time of Shavasana, our final time of rest, I invite you to begin it with just noticing your breath moving in and out. Just like we did at the beginning of class, just feeling your inhales move in through your nostrils, down your throat, into your lungs, and feel your body respond. Maybe your stomach or your chest rises and then falls. And then you can just stay with this breath awareness for as long as it is helpful to you. Anytime that you release it and just slip into more of a just relaxed state, that's okay too. And we'll be here for the next 3 minutes or so. Just know that even though I'm quiet, I'm still here with you. And you can choose to change your shape at any time. No questions asked. You can continue to stay here in this place of rest for as long as you want. There is no need to rush away or out of it. And if you are ready to start to move out of this time, you might add some movement back into your body. And if you're lying on your back or your stomach, you might roll over to one side. And then gently press yourself up, coming into any seated shape. Thank you for joining me for class today. I hope that you feel safe, connected, and at home in your body. Thank you.